So I think it was a great presentation. We're really hearing some more applied side of the technology. We've had a lot of presentations this whole week so far of how this innovation is going to benefit agribusiness, how AI is going to benefit the farmer, and be integrated in advancing agriculture. So thanks for everyone for attending this. I want to thank the organizers for letting us have this panel topic included. We're going to talk today about what's the investment community's perception of AI and data science innovation impact in the field of ag tech and food tech. So we got three esteemed partners here. They're all investors, have evaluated multiple different deals and companies that are trying to bring new technologies to the marketplace. We've seen many examples through the presentations this week. Not all ideas, I guess, are necessarily venture backable. You know, they don't need a lot of money to really get to the marketplace. But there are certain ideas that do take a lot of capital to scale and advance quickly to really plug in. And that's really where their expertise comes in, is sorting out what are those highest value companies to make the best impact in the marketplace and make sure those companies have the jet fuel they need to grow so quickly in order to make their impact. So we're going to start today just with some quick introductions. I got a few questions. Another thing I want to mention, I want to keep this interactive. So raise your hand throughout the panel. If you got a question, we want to make sure you guys are asking the questions of us that you have in mind as well. So we'll have microphones floating around. So with that, let me just start letting my panel introduce themselves. And by the way, my name is Paul Ulanch. I'm not a direct investor. I'm with an organization here in North Carolina called the North Carolina Biotech Center. Our mission is economic development and helping support the growth of innovation in the state. I focus our organization's activities on ag tech. So I've become deeply connected with the ag tech investor community. That's how I've gotten to meet my friends here. So with that, we're going to start letting them introduce themselves. Frank, we'll start with you since you're on the end.
Hi, I'm Frank Clemens. I'm the managing director for Generation Food Rural Partners Fund. We're a venture building fund. We start companies from scratch based on what our corporate partners and our limited partners are looking for in their innovation scheme of building things out. And so PhD in bioinorganic chemistry from Purdue, 28 years at DuPont, started in ag for 12 years. Did a lot of insecticide and herbicide development and registration. From there, I moved into tech transfer of all the biological areas at DuPont, and then became the managing director of DuPont Venture. In 2020, I decided to retire and really wanted to work with startups. Worked with about 10 startups. And around 2022, Big Idea Ventures came to me and said, we want to do this fund where we take IP from universities. North Carolina State University was the first university that joined us. But we now have 36 to 38 universities that we draw from, that we partner with directly, and then additional 90 other universities across the world to really develop companies in the food, ag, and material space that are related to food and ag. And so we have started 7 companies. In 2023, we started, and we had our first exit last week. And so in 2 years, and it was a biological company. So when they say ag takes a while to get to an exit, I always say no. It can go fast. You just have to find the right pull-through partner that's very interested in what you're doing and solves a huge problem for them. And that's what happened here, and had a wonderful exit in about 18, 19 months of that company. That was in Danville, not far from here. So,
congratulations. That's great. Hi, everybody. Great to be here. My name is Hannah Webb. I'm a venture partner at Levert Ventures. It's a brand new ag tech venture capital fund based here in Raleigh, North Carolina. We have an office up in RTP. The managing partner and founder is Karen Levert. Might be a familiar name for those that are local. She's very involved with this community. She actually started 2 accelerators in med device and ag tech before just finding that there was a gap of early stage funding. And also Levert, so the fund is named after her, but also it's French for the green. So we joke we were meant to be an ag tech. So the fund invests in early stage. That means seed to Series A. Bs would be a little bit less of a focus for this fund, but still in scope. So it's a pretty broad range, and we aim to be the first institutional check that goes into a company. And the scope is pretty broad of what we look at. It really buckets within food security and farmer resiliency. So those are, tools within crop protection, so biologics, traits, novel modality platforms, indoor ag, fintech, precision ag, including robotics that we're going to talk a little bit about today, and animal health too, on the precision or on the production animal side. So again, into the food security lens. As I said, it's the first fund. So we actually just did a first close a couple weeks ago, and we've made one investment. We are looking at quite a few opportunities where AI is a core component of the product or platform. So we see a huge value add to the farmers and also tools used for certain land and water conservation needs. My background, so I've been with the fund for about a year, but just a quick background, it's hard to follow yours, but about a decade in R&D at a large multinational and on the research side and post-harvest in food safety and microbiology labs. So I completely empathize and understand some of the kind of sometimes physically and mentally backbreaking research work, and then transferred to corp dev and licensing, and so I did the sell side of startups. So I can also empathize with founders when it comes to funding and trying to, you're talking about acquisition, trying to partner with the multinationals and trying to get your product out there. And now I'm on this side of the table, so it's great to be here.
All right, I'm Mohan Tavrath. Happy to be here. I'm a partner at International Farming. We are an asset manager with about $2 billion in assets under management across 3 strategies. The first strategy is a long-term REIT structure that invests in high-quality farmland in the U.S. and works with pension funds and other large allocators. So we are in every USDA region across multiple crops. The second part of the strategy is vertically integrated operating companies in food and ag. So top 3 apple operation in Washington State, 2/3 market share of Georgia peaches, along with pecans that are interplanted, and about 15,000 acres of almonds in Australia, as well as some fruit operations in South America. And then the third part of the strategy is data platforms. We've both got internal platforms as well as externally facing platforms that work with large CPGs and across the space. My background in food and ag is about 12 years, and concurrent with my work at International Farming. But prior to that, I worked in various other industries. So I think the food and ag industry is the most impactful industry on the planet, right? It's quintessential critical infrastructure, if you use COVID terminology. And I think it's really, really key to everything we do as a species. Food and water is fundamental to what we do. So how we bring technology and science to bear on that is very impactful. We had actually partnered with a group that was out of Duke, and they'd done satellite imagery analytics in a summer internship that ended up essentially becoming a company, and I chaired the board of that from startup to where it was acquired by Syngenta and it's part of the CropWise platform today. So again, it's a very, very tough but very meaningful industry. So happy to be here.
You can see they're all from rather different backgrounds, or at least focus of their investment interests. So Big Idea Ventures, fund that Frank really manages, is literally looking at super early stage things, innovation that's directly coming out of universities. So if that happens to be innovation anyone in this room is developing, Frank and his colleague Van that's in the room, maybe people you want to have a chance to visit with. Then as companies really kind of grow and get started, they really need additional capital to scale. So that's really where Levert Ventures and Hannah's expertise come in. What's really great to have Mo on here is they do investments in the innovation side, but from a very practical standpoint, that they're managing $2 billion worth of agricultural assets, farmland. And their whole idea is how do you maximize the value of the returns they're getting on those operations? So it's a really unique model, and love it that they're both looking at asset management as well as investments in innovation. So since the theme of this conference is artificial intelligence, and AI has definitely been plugging into ag in many different levels, what would you say have been the largest successes so far, and maybe the biggest failures in the use of AI in ag?
Want me to go first?
Yeah.
All right. I think just as I think Zach was presenting, there are a lot of different areas within AI. I think everybody's used AI as a assistant for work that they do, and it's significantly compressed the amount of time required for research and publication and making things look much more professional. I think in that one aspect of it, to be very cognizant of it, when people talk about regressing to the mean, it raises the mean or the average. So I think the key is understanding where true knowledge is versus its good assembly of information that already exists. The second is agentic AI, where you can take repetitive processes and have AI agents assist you in that task. And Claude Cowork, and there's a few others, OpenClaw, that have got much more press recently. And the third is true enterprise AI, which is going to take a lot more work and time. And the reason for that is when you're getting data across multiple data sets. And those data sets may not be clean and clear because they didn't begin that way. And I think one very good example is a grower will potentially use multiple products. They'll use BASF, they'll use Bayer, they'll use Syngenta, they'll use a lot of different platforms. And so while each of the companies have their own AI technology and assistance, I think the question is, how do those interplay when you want the equivalent of a crop consultant who's providing you an independent assessment of what's the best crop protection product or fungicide or genetics that you to use, and we can't expect the grower to go and consult 5 different AI platforms of each of the companies and then come up with an objective decision. So that's something that still needs to be solved for. Again, credit to the companies that are doing the work, but that's still a little bit more wood to chop.
Yeah, for what I see, we talk to a lot of farmers, and I think that's a key, and that's one thing I really was missing here this week as we were listening to the talks is, understanding what the farmers want. And so we look at the farmers and ranchers holistically, and it's not only what they're planting in the field, but their back office. And I think that's where the success has started already, especially in AI, in building and helping these farmers get their inventory, their invoices, their pay schedules, all out of people are still using notebooks, people are using Excel, and getting it into a system. Now, financial AI, we know, is already way ahead of where we are. And so they're just bringing that along. And even last year at Rally in Indiana, saw tremendous amounts of movement in that area. And the farmers want that. The farmers need a way to do the back office because there's no time. They are torn in so many directions. And if you talk to them, they would love something in the background that collects all the data, puts it into a meaningful display that they can look at it on their phone. That's what they use predominantly, not an iPad, not their work computers. They are using their phones and be able to make decisions from that. And so they don't want the AI to control their money. They want their AI to make their lives simpler. And I think that's one of the big successes in the farming community we are seeing is that whole back office and getting that. It's a mess. It's an absolute mess. And I'm glad that they are actually working on that and figuring that all out. And for us, that's been, that to me shows that we can do this. We can work with the farmers. Even the panel yesterday from the food producers, would you use AI? And some people, most of them said no, or very hesitantly said yes. That was very surprising to me. And so, and I think after hearing Zach's talk today, they're iterating also. They've had some bad experiences. They have had some good experiences. They need a lot more good experiences. And that's what I think the people in this room can really help them and help the corporates and the people deploying these the large models here, the solutions, to make them really robust and that the farmers get that, we get their trust back in that. But I see it already on the financial side for their bookkeeping and just organizing all that.
Yeah, and kind of going off of that of, defining a problem first and where AI has potentially filled that problem, maybe something that hasn't been widely adopted, but labor shortage problem, right? So the use of on-farm robotics for precision weeding and spraying, I think that's an interesting area, especially it's gotten a lot of traction in investments and talk at conferences recently. So, if we think about like small and medium-sized farms, right, there is a labor shortage problem. It's a huge cost to them. It's something like 700,000 medium-sized farms from a revenue perspective have been lost in the last generation. Lots of factors involved in that. But, if you can have even just a small robotic that can perform a task that, a lot of people don't want to do, that can make a dramatic cost savings and time savings to groups like that, to that size farm. So I think that's an area that, maybe not highly adopted yet, but if there are tools out there that one is cost effective, that has been developed in conjunction with farmers so they know what the product actually needs to look like, how rugged it needs to be, real world conditions. It's not some $100,000 machine, for example. I think that's going to be a huge win for AI and ag. Now, what's maybe kind of overemphasized, I think sometimes, or at least in some opportunities that come to us, is overuse of agentic AI in physical AI use cases, especially in like highly regulated tasks. Thinking of like farm in a bubble where it's all fully automated, like it almost like just it's way out in the future. And I think we're still at the early days with thinking about that. And also, a couple weeks ago was World Ag Tech. There was a panel on agentic AI, and there was an interesting comment made. Just because you can automate something doesn't mean you should. Like ag is a very relationship, trust-built business industry. So if you have a task, it totally depends on the use case, right? But if you have a certain task that's customer-facing, maybe you don't want an agent there. Maybe you actually want a person. So I thought that was interesting for that use case. Where are we really at that stage for some physical AI use cases, and then is it actually going to be useful for all those?
I think the investment community overall is seeing an overuse of AI within startup pitches. It's what really makes for a true compelling use case for inclusion of AI in a company's business plan. And Mohan, I recall from our chat we had earlier, you kind of mentioned like 3 different layers. I didn't know if you could peel that apart. Where do you see the value truly being added with these systems?
I think a lot of this has to look at the time horizon. Right now, there's this artificial push for speed because everybody's doing AI, and if you're not doing AI, you'll get left behind. I think trust is a very fundamental layer. So, I mean, look at the crop consultant that's built his business in Iowa in row crops, classic Midwest. He's really good at what he does. He's been doing variable rate prescriptions for over 20 years. He's built the trust in the community because he went to school with his neighbors. And that's why he's built a concentric circle of people around him who have seen yield increases year over year, not based on him having used AI for 20 years, just based on him understanding their farms and what they do and their behavioral practices. So that's person-to-person interaction. Similarly, there's a lady in Georgia, in southern Georgia, who's got a complete lock on that market in the specific crops grown over there. That's trust that has been built up over 35, 40 years. So the real opportunity for AI in that case is these people are over time, they're the experts. They really understand the geography, the crop, the culture, and they built that trust year over year. They're aging out. And that's something that nobody talks about. And that trust doesn't get built immediately. And some of them are trying to figure out how to exit their business, but it can't happen overnight. And it's not like somebody else can come in and say, here I am with my AI, and I'm going to replace, Carol, and I'm going to replace Greg. So that's really a part of the time horizon. And we saw this earlier. There's also an arms race going on between Anthropic and OpenAI and Perplexity and all of these different engines. And if you go back to the web era, you remember when there was InfoSeek and Lycos and Ask Jeeves and Yahoo, and then Google came out ahead. So even as you're building these AI infrastructures, you have to build them in an independent architectural construct that allows you to plug and play the best of what is there at a certain amount of time and not get too much on the bleeding edge of that, because otherwise you would have invested in, let's say, $2 million over a year and a half to build a foundational model from scratch. And now suddenly Anthropic comes out with Mythos and it's inbuilt there. So you just wasted $2 million building what you thought was a bespoke, differentiated application that the AI companies have solved for. So I think those are kind of the business construct and the people aspect of trust, which is supreme in ag, that have to be weighted correctly for it to be effective. So,
Yeah.
Yeah. To me, the money in ag is not where it is in other sectors. I mean, let's be serious, especially in the investing area. Everybody thinks AI is hot right now. It's being fully invested, not in ag. It really isn't. And I think the reason for that is ag is difficult. Ag is something where you really have to build that trust with the farmer, with the ranchers that you're working with. You need to get out there. The extension services here, went to a land grant, understand that extremely well, get these grad students out to the farms in groves and make sure they understand what it takes for a farmer just to make some money. It is extremely marginalized, very difficult, and you need to make sure that what you're working on isn't adding more cost to them, and it's actually you're trying to find new revenue sources for them. So, Van is a phenomenal individual in our group that builds a lot of these new startups that we're putting together. One of the things we're looking at is how can we get to the farmer more money? Carbon credits, carbon incense, very, very important for them to make new revenue streams into that. And so to start thinking about that with what you're working on is how else could they bring money in, and what problem are you truly trying to solve with them? Because if it's not a burning need, they're not going to go and take it. They just don't have the money for it.
Yeah, and just a very general point is, what makes a company interesting that incorporates AI to investors. Part of the due diligence process, if we meet a company and then we start talking to them more, we want to get in the data room, we talk to all potential customers, end users, growers, potential partners, acquirers. We talk to everybody. And it's interesting how many companies that we talk to that we stop talking to after that stage because they have never talked to a grower, and they have spent so much time and sometimes other people's money to develop something that is way more complex than what anybody even wants. So if you don't incorporate that early on, that's a huge flag because you're not going to be spending, your investors' money well. So you need to have, especially if you're pre-revenue, like a target product profile, and that needs to be in marriage with your end users and ideally in marriage with your potential acquirers. I think the Centera acquisition by John Deere is a great example. I think that's really interesting where it's a hardware play, but there's a software lens, and it's a natural iteration to a plug and play with a company that has a complementary service. So if it's really hard to look at the end goal being potentially acquired by a strategic and work backwards, but I think if you don't start having those discussions early on and mapping out what you should actually be researching, then you're going to waste a lot of money and time.
I'm glad you brought up the hardware component, because I've heard some of the presentations this week talking about unique new sensors or way of gathering the data. And I think that those could be really interesting, compelling ideas. They may not necessarily be the true ideas that would scale that would need a venture investor, but I could see many of the ideas presented this week really adding value to the farmer or agribusiness. And I think the unique data sets many of you are gathering, I think, is also some compelling information. So I saw that as examples of some good work that was presented. Little survey of the audience. Anybody else have any other ideas they think are like super compelling ideas of the use of AI that would benefit ag? All right, no hands yet. Okay.
no, there was one there.
Oh, we
Oh,
got one.
we got one
back there.
again in the back.
A one-part idea, one-part question. We saw the John Deere presentation on how close they are to fully autonomous vehicles, the Syngenta presentation on agentic AI and decision-making tools, other presentations on aerial drones. I mean, how far away are we to a totally autonomous farming experience?
In certain areas, I think in row crops, we think we're much closer than specialties. I think specialties, just the equipment you need for that is so much different, and not as many acres. It's all based on acres. And so to me, I do think, we're going to, I have a feeling one day a farmer is going to be farming from his front porch or her front porch. And people laugh when I say that, and I wonder how many farmers would want to do that anyways, because I'm a gardener and I love being in the dirt. So and I think they feel the same way. And so the oversight, the mundane stuff, I think we're already eliminating, and that's where what we really should be focusing on right now. And then the overall, I think harvesting right now is extremely automated, that they're harvesting 24/7. I was in Indiana during the harvest, and those tractors were going at 2 or 3 in the morning. Why I was up that early, don't ask. But it was very interesting to see, and there's nobody in the cabs. It's amazing to see that. So are we that far away? I think the biggest limitation is the processing of all that information and making sure that there's enough power behind that. And, I think certain areas are really focusing in on that. China, I think, is going to wipe us in this area. And, they're so far ahead of us in this. They have over 2,000 ag startups in AI, just in AI. And every province there has challenges for ag AI solutions. We don't have that infrastructure here to do that. The government isn't doing that, of course. And so it'd be great to have some kind of a program there. They're going to have a lot of misses, but they're going to find the gems there.
I mean, Mohan, it's a great question, I think, for international farming. What's, as
Yeah.
both an innovation investor, but also a farmland asset manager, what's international farming's take on that?
Yeah, so in many cases, we have to eat our own dog food, right? So we have a trials program. We've done over 300, 400 trials over the last decade. And we test everything from genetics to crop prediction to data platforms to automation and AI as well. I think you hit upon a key point over there. Row crops lend themselves to more automation just because it's a larger market. But the 270 million acres east of the Rockies have the same revenue as the 30 million west of the Rockies, right? There's about 2.1 million growers in the US, which has one of the best efficiency rates when you say the average farmer here is feeding about 100, 150 people on average. Versus if you look at India, it's almost 400 million people. So each person is feeding 3 to 4 people. So there's a wide disparity. And so I think it will really depend on the markets and the geographies and the crops. So on one of our platforms, we were down in South America, and the grower over there literally said, my dad couldn't come, and that's why I came to this conference, because he's got 4,000 hectares, he's got 4 farm managers. They drive up every morning in the pickup truck, they have a notepad. They tell my dad what they did the previous day. He listens to them, and then he writes down on a notepad what he wants them to do the next day. They jump into the pickup trucks and they drive back out. So that's for 4,000 hectare farmers. Think about a smallholder grower in Africa with 1 acre to 2.5 acres. They're a far cry away from automation. So I think it's not one size fits all. It's what is done, how is it done, where is the best impact. So as an example, the extension service is a great example, where with funding, going through different challenges globally, what can you do to help the lowest common denominator, the farmer who's a smallholder grower, he or she has challenges in understanding what to grow, how to manage their crop. And any incremental update or improvement makes a massive difference to their profitability, to your point. There's a group that has 18,000 growers, and today they're the largest grape exporter from India as an example, but they did that. The average grower is 1 acre to 2.5 acres, and they brought common infrastructure services to help them. And we'll have a look at an example if we have time in Africa as well. So
Yeah.
Back to you.
Great question. Thank you. Automation sounds like I think it'd be also a highly compelling area, starting with row crops. But I just could see in the future where it moves in the row crops. I think it's just going to be cost of operations. I mean, I've heard many times this week, return on investment, ROI. And I think that's the challenge is the farmer needs to make money. It's not just growing the crops. This is a business. I mean, Frank, you mentioned a lot of AI tools on the financial management, the fintech aspects of ag. I think that's really taking off. So what are the concerns with the integration of AI tools? Zach, I appreciate your presentation this morning because
that was great.
It was great hearing not just the success, hey, we got this cool platform. It's the success from learning time and time and time again from the failures. I thought that was an awesome presentation. You usually don't hear that. And especially, I think it's hearing it from a big company. I think it was a very humbling approach, saying we started and it failed, we built on it, it failed, we built on it, failed, and now it's an awesome platform. So thanks for that. Clearly, there's some problems integrating AI. And what other challenges the three you potentially seeing or fearing is going to happen?
Yeah, Syngenta, Corteva, BASF, they all have big pockets, no offense, but you guys can fail over and over again and keep correcting, which is great. Startup doesn't have that. They have a limited runway. Their money goes fast. And so that is one of the biggest concern is, do we have enough money to put into these companies? And I kept saying to Paul, is AI VCable? And, can a VC keep putting in money? Now, we put in around $8 million into one of our companies to get them from conception to Series A, to revenue. They're already bringing out revenue. Is that enough for us to do an AI company? And the iterative piece to this, to talking to customers, takes time. It takes money. And, to me, that has me, that's the worry that I have with, starting up an AI company. It's not that we're not looking, we are, and it looks like we will be starting up one in the livestock area, just a little bit easier to, herd the cows there. But for us, we thought that was an area that we can start and really work with that pull-through partner and really figure out what solutions they're looking for and how they can help build it alongside of with us. But again, is it enough money? I mean, $8 million, you're thinking about that, and, funding out there. God, if I had $8 million, I could do a lot. It goes fast. It's amazing how fast $8 million goes, especially when you have a team and, you're trying something new and you're going to fail. But, there those days where you're not failing, those are the highs. And I really, really related to that. And so to me, that's where I think, is there enough money in the VC world to do this for ag in a very substantial way? Or is it going to go, we start early and one of the larger corps brings it in and continues on from there? So in that case, the startup world needs to work with Syngenta, Corteva, BASF much more closely. Universities need to be working with them a lot more, just to understand what they're missing. What are they looking for? That's the key. That, if you're going to be Sherlock Holmes out there, that's what you need to find out, is what are they missing? What's the problem to solve? And then go solve it. To do research just for the sake of doing research is just applied research to me. It's great. You learn things, but the commercial research that you can do that can actually get to a commercial product is so much different. And, because you need the input from the corporations.
One of the concerns that was brought up on a company that we're looking at that incorporates AI was actually this company had used farmers as kind of the guinea pigs, and then there was a bad recommendation. And you can only do that so much before that company kind of just loses its trust, right? We've been talking about that. So I think that's kind of a hard part, which is how are you going to develop your product without and getting real-time feedback, working with growers, but not obviously making such bad or incorrect, potentially predictions or recommendations and don't harm your product. So that's where I think, to Frank's point, like having partners, industry partners, university collaborators, working with strategics even, and getting that kind of iterative feedback loop on your product design is going to be really important. So you're not using your customers as guinea pigs because they might not come back to your product.
Mohan, do you have anything else to add? You see the concerns with the use of AI?
Yeah, I think there's opportunity and there's concern. I think one aspect to think about is, excuse me, you talked about John Deere as an example. So you have enough deep pockets and you've got market share and you can test it out before and make sure it's working before you roll it out. I think that's very key to your point as well, Hannah, is you can't experiment with a grower. They don't want to be the guinea pig. And if it goes wrong even 1 out of 5 times, they'll remember that. I think the second is when you're looking at large scale automation, to your earlier question, where it's actually worked, ironically, is when the military puts in the R&D because they have the deep pockets to be able to do that. So GPS is a perfect example. If that was VC'd in ag, it would never have got out.
Yeah.
It would never have been successful. So I think we have to figure out where we can take what the defense industry is doing well and piggyback on that where the technology can be made kind of civilian ready. You've got Anduril, you've got Palantir, you've got a lot of other groups that are doing tremendous amount of AI with massive data sets. And so I think if we can get onto that infrastructure, that's a good way to think about it.
I saw a hand go up over here.
I'm interested in your assessment of the willingness to pay for any AI solutions, right? Because if you're thinking about building any companies and as a consequence investing in those companies, a lot of it is about how much revenue they can generate or impact that they can have in the marketplace. So what are those? What are the expectations that you're seeing, either from growers or from strategics who are working with the growers, for instance, to or any other stakeholders in terms of pull through for AI-oriented solutions? And is that a bottleneck for your investments?
No, I think the bottleneck is not truly understanding what the problem they're trying to solve. Is not listening. I think we all come to these discussions with a bias. It's nice to come to these discussions with an open mind and then design the company and or the research around that of what they're looking for. To me, the feeling, I don't think in the past the corporates had, even when I was at DuPont, the corporates had the time to say, and they would drag their feet. I don't think they're in the same boat right now. Everybody's competing for the same amount of money. There's only a pool of money, and they're all competing for that. And so I think it's gotten a lot tighter, and so they are moving a lot faster in our eyes that we see. They're willing to sit down and talk with us, and really us understanding what their core needs, not only right now, but in 2 years and in 5 years, and where they're going with this. And that's extremely helpful when you're trying to build a company and bring in a pull-through partner that can then work side by side with our CEO and come out with a product that can really help them, launch and even take it further. I think startups in the ag world need to do things differently. I think we're going to get our ag startups to a certain level, and then they're either acquired or they're abandoned. I think that's what we're seeing now. I mean, I Googled or whatever, ChatGPT'd, ag startups. There are 100, 150. I did the top ags, and when I did that for AI, I got 6. And so it was really an eye-opener, because if I did that last year, we would have gotten a lot more. So a lot have already been weeded out now, and you're seeing the numbers come down. But to me, it's still understanding the problem that's the key here. If you can work that in your equation of doing research and or building companies, that to me is extremely important.
I see we're out of time. Did you have anything else briefly to add to that particular question? Thank you for asking that.
I don't. No, go ahead.
Yeah, I think main thing is look at it through the grower's eyes. I think, are you increasing yield? Are you increasing profitability? Are you lowering costs? Are you giving them more visibility to what they're doing? And so it's the mirror versus the glass. A lot of startups, and this is right from the beginning when I first got in the industry, you'd have startups that would come and say, look at everything we can do. It's only $1 an acre. But if there's 10 of them, that's $10 per acre, and nobody's integrating those solutions together. And the grower is not a data or systems integrator. So if you're driving a startup, you have to think about how easy you can make it where the grower has minimal changes to an existing practice. If you can do that, it'll be successful. If you require the grower to do something different, chances are very low of success.
All right, with that, I think we're out of time. Thank you for the questions, and I want to thank my panelists for the participation today. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.